Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Keeping Up with E-commerce, brought to you by our friends at SAP Upscale Commerce. I'm Dan Gingiss, the experience maker. I'm a customer experience speaker, coach, author, and podcaster, and your host for this awesome show. Very excited today to tackle another interesting topic about e-commerce. You know, one of the things that we've seen over the last 18, 24 months is an unbelievable move to digital faster than anybody expected. Yeah, it was already happening before the pandemic, but a lot of companies realized that they just couldn't have a 5-year plan anymore. They needed to have a 5-week plan. And so everything moved so quickly to digital, getting us to the point where we now have to ask the question, has retail and e-commerce really become essentially one and the same? Is there really that much of a difference anymore? And to talk about that question, we have two incredible guests here today. I'm super excited. First, I want to introduce Naeem Arif. He is coming to us from Birmingham, England. He's the director of United Carpets and the chair of the Midlands Retail Forum. Naeem, how's it going today?
Yeah, really good, Dan. Good to be on the show again, and looking forward to hearing this chat because I think it's a really important topic right now.
Well, glad to have you back. Give us a quick update on you and your background.
Yeah, so Naeem Arif, I'm a director at United Carpets. I've got a retail background. I've also worked with some great brands as a consultant. I've written no less than 9 books around customer experience and SAP. So hopefully going to give you a little bit of more of a practitioner's point of view today from the retail side and from this side of the pond, of course.
Fantastic. I feel so inferior now, only having 2 books out. I got to catch up to you, Naeem. And also, as usual, we're going to bring in an expert from SAP. And today we have Nuno Pedro, live from Lisbon, Portugal. He's the global head of commerce for SAP. How you doing, Nuno?
So far, so good. Excited to be here and be part of the conversation, Dan.
We're glad to have you. Tell us a little bit about what you do in your role at SAP.
So I've joined SAP about a little bit over a year ago. Before all that, I was working on the customer side, so at PVH and Calvin Klein first. Before of that, I was working for Adidas, always in the commerce, digital marketing, consumer engagement space. And having joined SAP, I think the key reason why I was brought in was to really bring a little bit more of a customer flavor into the SAP commerce products. And my current role is basically heading up the organization, the product and engineering organization, responsible for defining, designing, delivering all the SAP commerce products.
What I love about that is that SAP practices what it preaches. In order to know your customer, you got to bring in people who have been customers and who can, represent that perspective. So great to have you, Nuno. I'm actually going to start with you, Nuno, and ask you this question about this term that we keep throwing around called digital transformation. And it's starting to feel like that term is just getting a little old, that it's been around for too long. Have we already transformed?
That's a very good question. If I'm honest with you, then I don't think transformation will ever be done. And I think anyone thinking about it as something that has a beginning and an end is going about it all wrong, right? So it's a continuous transformation, evolution. So I think we should call it digital evolution rather than digital transformation. And my take on that is, look, what I think people need to realize and understand, where is it coming from? I think the evolution of technology, right? So being the smartphone, internet, social media. So there have been multiple disruption elements that have caused the human being, all of us, to behave in a different way, right? So there's that beautiful picture of some years ago, people looking at the newspaper. Nowadays, people looking at an iPad. So it's a completely different ball game, and therefore human behavior has changed, and therefore companies, their business model needs to evolve to keep up with that behavioral change, right? And if you ask me, that's exactly what digital transformation is companies being able to change their processes, their systems, training their people to be able to keep up with the behavioral change that the human being is experiencing today.
How about you, Naeem? Are you seeing in your work that the digital transformation has arrived and that's really the focus? Is it looked at 50-50 with the in-person retail, or where does it sit in your world?
Yeah, so just to add to what Nuno said, I'm going to say two things. I think, first of all, COVID has really accelerated it. I think there's a lot of downtime where people, some of the brands who were still thinking, we need to have a physical only presence. A lot of those brands have also given up, they've surrendered to digital. So I think, yeah, definitely it is all part, it is out there, and it's what a lot of people are doing. And the second thing I'm saying, again, supporting what Nuno is saying, if people are still saying we've got a separate physical and a separate digital strategy, I think you're behind the times. It's got to be it is your strategy. Digital has got to be part of your infrastructure, not just how you reach your customers, but how you do business yourself. With so many more people working from home in offices, that's not just your staff, that's your customers as well. So for me, digital has to be everything we're doing nowadays.
Well, and Naeem, it occurs to me that in almost every shopping situation, whether it is groceries or buying a car, there is something involved with a digital aspect to it. We might be researching a particular brand, or we might be looking for sales, or whatever it is. And so really this idea of retailing, in my mind, has become a combination of the in-person and the digital. I don't like the word omnichannel because I think it's really overused, and I also think it confuses people. It makes people think they have to be in every single channel, and I always say you only have to be in the channels where your customers are. But talk about this idea of, let's call it multi-channel, which is that the shopping experience now very often across many industries incorporates both a digital and a physical aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen some really interesting things through the Midlands Retail Forum. See some really interesting things whereby not only are people shopping online on their sofas, investigating online on their sofas, or in the car whilst they're waiting to pick up their kids from school, we're also seeing people sometimes in a competitor's store, looking at a product in front of them and then looking at their phones. So we're seeing that it is very much omni, multi, whatever the word you want to use. And the other thing I think it's replaced is, 20 years ago, whereas if you went to a store and you needed to have the technical specification of a product, nowadays, those service assistants, customer service assistants, can really concentrate on the customer service aspect, because most of the time your customers are coming to you and they are upskilled, they are informed, so we are seeing this, and that digital aspect is all over the place. It is everywhere, part of that experience that people are requesting and in fact expecting. It's an expectation.
So Nuno, being the SAP guy here in the room, talk to me about technology and the power of technology in terms of enabling these e-commerce digital experiences. And what are you seeing in terms, especially in the last year and a half, 2 years with the pandemic, where are you seeing companies focus?
Yeah. So I think as part of that accelerated transformation that you were talking about, then, I mean, it's clear that companies that probably never thought about selling online, they are now venturing in that realm, and therefore they're looking into technology solutions to be able to cope with this new model, channel, whatever you want to call it. And then you have other companies, other customers that are significantly further along that journey, that were already transforming and more experienced when it comes to selling online, that now they want to accelerate, take it to the next level. But the one common denominator is there's a lot of confusion out there in the industry, right? So there's these buzzwords that everyone talks about. Oh, decomposable commerce. Oh, microservices. Oh, multi-tenant. Oh, software as a service, right? That they are used out of context and a little bit randomly. That I think it's important to kind of streamline the understanding of all of that, right? And my simplified version of what's actually happening is, on one side, you have more and more touch points where consumers can interact and purchase, right? Being a website, being a mobile app, being a clienteling tool on in the store. So you have an ecosystem of touch points. So you have multiple front ends where consumers can buy on one side. What that then entails is that in terms of the back end, as you have multiple touch points on the front end, you don't want to have multiple services providing the same information about product or promotions or pricing. One service for each one of those different front end elements. So you want to have a centralized backend that can provide what we call headless commerce, right? And therefore mastering that and having multiple front end store experiences and the connection to multiple APIs that connect the multiple package business capabilities that commerce should have. So that's a common trend. And then the interesting element is to see how differently companies are thinking about it, right? So some companies are thinking that, okay, I want a partner, a vendor to be able to do all of this for me, and I want to centralize it as an e-commerce solution. Some other customers want to have a more of a best-in-breed approach where they want to select for each one of the different elements in the overall architecture, they want a best-in-breed solution. I mean, there's no right or wrong, right? But the trade-offs are clear, right? So one thing is having a centralized solution. You have a vendor taking on pretty much all of the burden for you and helping you on the journey. If you go with a more best-in-breed approach, I mean, you're taking on a lot of that integration complexity on your own. And the key question is, are you ready for that investment? And is your organization mature enough to take on that?
You know, Naeem said something that I want to come back to about this idea of oftentimes in a company, the e-commerce team and maybe the retail team are two different teams. And it occurs to me as you were talking that if I shop online at a clothing store and I make a purchase of some blue jeans or whatever it is, I then get recommendations based on my purchases. So, maybe you should buy this shirt that goes along with these blue jeans or whatever. What I haven't yet seen, but I'm wondering if either there are certain companies that are there or they need to be there. I haven't seen that same thing happening in store. And especially what I haven't seen is the crossover of that data. So the next time I go on to the e-commerce site, it knows what I just bought at the mall the other day from the same store, but I bought it in person and vice versa. Are you seeing companies start to connect those dots?
Absolutely. So I think part of that digital transformation, if I'm honest with you, is so the lines are blurred between physical and digital. And that implies that all of a sudden, I mean, acknowledging that there are consumer journeys starting online and ending in the store. And there are journeys starting in the physical store and the purchase being done in line, just like Naeem was saying, right? So I think there's more and more companies acknowledging that in that single consumer view, in that consumer data platform that they might have, they need to centralize in there a unique consumer profile with both commerce data as well as retail data, right? And then ingest, digest all of that, and then be ready to activate that data across both brick and mortar stores. So some clienteling tools, maybe face recognition, wherever that's allowed because of GDPR and all of that. But so really understanding, Nuno is walking into the store. He has been browsing this. So I might as well walk up to him in a non-freaky way, right? But walk up to him and say, maybe look at this product. This is really cool for you. And in the same way, just like you were saying, if I bought something online, I mean, it's a waste of good marketing working budget if you know that someone has bought the product online, why are you retargeting that product, right? You're throwing money through the window.
Yeah. Well, and I want to just clarify too, you're absolutely right that you've got experiences that start online and come into physical retail. You have experiences that do the reverse, but we've also got separate transactions, right? I might have an entirely online transaction where you sent me an email, there's a big sale, so I go buy something and I never walk into the store. And likewise, I might be wandering through the mall and I happen to go into your store and have an entirely in-person transaction. And I think what seems to be missing is the connection between those transactions. either the ones that are independently one channel or the other, or the ones that you mentioned could cross channels. Naeem, what are you seeing in terms of this and sort of this multi-channel view?
Well, I'm going to add one more to what Nuno said. So we have in United Carpets, we have a situation where people will browse online, come into store, check a product out, then go back home to complete a credit check to buy something. So we come back to where we started, and I think Nuno said this as well, which is it's got to be one channel. It is effectively one channel, whether we're buying digitally or physically. It's got to be one channel, because retail is still going to remain a social sport, right? On a Saturday, you know, I've had a busy week. I want to go to the mall. I want to get something to eat. I don't necessarily want to buy something. So I'm walking around. I have a touch point. I see something, and I may go back and buy it Saturday night or Sunday. And alternatively, I may be at work in the week. I check something online. You know, I see something on social media. I quite like it. I research it. I buy it on Saturday. So I think we're saying that it's got to be that one channel, you know, the multi-channel, the omni-channel, it's all got to be connected. And the way our customers buy from us, or the way that our customers reach us, has to satisfy all those different options. So definitely we're seeing a whole mismatch of how people are engaging with us and buying from us.
So let me shift gears a little bit. We've talked before about how companies and retailers can stand out in the physical space. And, you know, I'm thinking of stores like the Lego store that's really known for having an experience, and it's a destination for kids and adults to come and play with the Legos and really engage with them before they buy. How do companies differentiate in the e-commerce space? And how do they go beyond browse, put into a cart, check out like every other e-commerce company? And I guess I would add as a corollary, how do you strategize beyond just copying Amazon? Because I always like to say you can't out Amazon. They're the best at what they do for a reason. But my belief is that what customers want is for you to be your brand, to be your own brand, not for you to be Amazon. Can you talk about just some ideas in terms of how companies can differentiate in that crowded e-commerce space?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing is to understand that it's actually an ecosystem, and it's an ecosystem that has multiple channels, and you need to think about each touch point, each channel in a layered way, right? Meaning, so you might have a specific mobile app, a generic website, and then you have Amazon, right? And then you have some companies like the Nikes of this world that said, actually, I don't sell product in Amazon because I'm strong enough to in my own channels to have my product only placed there. So therefore, I think there's a layer of product range that you say, I want to have a different experience in a different touch point, and product is part of that experience. So that's something to think about. The other part is understanding that in each touch point, you will be able to gather consumer data, consumer behavioral data, right? And what would happen? Imagine the wonderful world where instead of just optimizing for conversion, right, and thinking about the funnel in commerce and where's my leaky bucket and optimizing for that, imagine that if you actually think consumer lifetime value and managing a relationship and thinking broader than just optimizing for transaction. So that would be another interesting area of focus. And the last one, so using an example that in a situation in a previous company that I worked for. So what if the site is blank to begin with, right? So you just know, okay, this guy sell whatever product, I'm interested. So I go there, I start with a blank site, and actually the site or the experience starts asking the consumer questions about what are you looking for? What do you want it? Why do you want it? What do you want it for, right? And all of a sudden, you can actually start filling in the site based on the experience and what the consumer is actually looking for.
I think that's really, really cool. I definitely love that example. How about you, Naeem?
Yeah, I think, look, this is a tough one because what you're asking for is the magic sauce, right? You know, we all know we've got to give a better customer experience, but for me, it comes back to, we could talk about fast, we could talk about friendly, we could talk about fun, but as you said before, we can't Amazon. This is where I think we come back to that, the backstory, the storytelling, the keeping your branding, your customers engaged with your brand. Is it Seth Godin, I think, talks about tribes? This is where I think you've got to go that extra level, because you can have all the data in the world and you can have all the SEO in the world, but unless you can find the way to grab the attention of your customers and keep the attention of your customers, you're not gonna win in this, in the next 10 years. And for me, it's about finding that way to keep your customers engaged. And the way I always go back to this is that storytelling, that engagement, that bit of fun, that stuff which people sometimes think is a bit of fluff. It's not relevant, but it is, because it keeps you connected to your customers when you're talking about things other than just your brand, just your product, sorry. And it's that bit of marketing or the other stuff you do, but you've got to keep them engaged. That's the way it's going to be, because if they buy into your backstory, if they buy into the engagement you're offering them, then they're going to stay with you for life.
Yeah, I agree, and oftentimes that it can be related to social issues. There's definitely customers that chase after companies that are environmentally friendly, or that are particularly on one side or another of a social issue. I also think something that Nuno pointed out, which is so critical, is this idea that, and Amazon is the best at this, they understand that an individual transaction is not worth losing a customer over, and that the long-term value of the customer is always going to outweigh it. That's why it's so easy to return something at Amazon. And I do think that pieces, those are the types of pieces within an individual transaction that really stand out to people. Are you going to give me a hard time to return something and make me pay for return shipping? Or if I've lost my receipt, are you going to not take it back? Or are you going to understand what you do at this very moment when I want to return something because I'm unhappy with it is going to determine whether I continue to do business with you for years to come? And I think Amazon absolutely understands that. I tell a story in my book about a set of pots and pans that I bought from Amazon, and one glass lid showed up completely broken. And so I called Amazon and asked them for a replacement lid. And the lady was like, I don't know how to give you a replacement lid. And so I'm just going to refund your money. Go ahead and keep the pots and pans. And my thinking went from being disappointed that I had a broken lid to being like, woohoo, free pots and pans. And I love Amazon even more. And, 500 transactions since then, I think they probably made up the cost of that one transaction where they lost some money. So I do think those are the types of things that e-retailers need to look at.
Can I just step in 1 second there? So
Yeah,
that receipt issue, that receipt example, that's a classic example of, where classic retail of bring your receipt in. Customers are going to say, why should we bring a receipt in? Yeah, why should we have a receipt? We're in 2021, and it's those little things where we as retailers, hospitality businesses, whatever it is, we've got to get better at.
I was just in a major retailer, I won't name it, the other day, and I watched somebody ahead of me return 3 items. And they were told that because those 3 items were on 3 different receipts, that they needed to issue them 3 different gift cards. I was like, why? Why is that policy even in place? And why the complexity, right? If we have a choice between simplicity or complexity, simplicity always wins. 100%. But I do fear that retailers often go the complex route. All right, we are just about out of time. Nuno, 30 seconds or less. Just give me your takeaways on what's coming next in the e-commerce world.
So that's still $1 million question. I think we will see a continued channel explosion. Data, no longer the new oil, but the new solar power, and own the ecosystem, or develop the ecosystem and own the relationship with the consumer. I
love it. How about you, Naeem?
I want to be controversial. The brands that are going to win in 2022 are the ones who make it easy for their customers and see 100% from their customer point of view. It's not about the tech. It's about you connecting with your customers.
All right. Well, I think we've got a theme there. I am completely bought in. We know that customers today want to have relationships with the brands that they give their hard-earned money to. And whether that's in person or in e-commerce, We've got to find a way to establish that relationship. And remember that relationships and loyalty go both ways. Both parties need to participate in it. Naim, Nuno, thank you so much for being here. Love the insights today. And thank you to our audience for tuning in each time to Keeping Up with E-commerce. My name is Dan Gingiss. I am the Experience Maker on behalf of SAP Upscale Commerce. Thanks for viewing, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.